Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Go Comedy. It's now time for Let's Just Say. Please welcome your host, Amy Alvarez.
Hello, thank you everyone. How is everyone tonight? Good? Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to Let's Just Say, Go Comedy's monthly storytelling show. Thank you so much for spending the evening with us. We have a wonderful lineup of storytellers tonight. Quickly, I will explain how the show is going to go, but it is extremely obvious. We, one by one, we're all going to come up here. We're going to tell you a true story from our lives. And the theme for this month is beginnings. And like, that's really it. That's going to be the only thing that, like, is the linking thing between these stories. Now, just because we're at Go Comedy doesn't necessarily mean every story is going to be a comedy. A lot of them will be, though, because life is funny. But yeah, so that's kind of what you're in for. There's one little stipulation in that we're trying to keep the stories to 7 minutes. I will remind people of that using the world's tiniest harmonica. So when you hear that, yeah, it's real. So that's the signal to wrap it up. And yeah, and then to get things started, I will tell you a story of my own. And so as far as beginnings go, I feel like dating on Tinder is just a vast array of beginnings that are all too terrible to have middles or endings. Just drop them right, like 10 minutes. So I avoided that app for years and years because it seemed like terrible and merciless, but I worked my still current job. My manager at the time was recently divorced, and she had found Tinder. Twitter's not much better. But she had found Tinder and was just spending like huge amounts of time at work on it. And like all of our coworkers would like surround her and everyone would just laugh. It was like a slumber party or something. But instead of like calling boys, they were like messaging men on Tinder. And so I was like, I don't know, this just seems like harmless fun. And so one day I decided to make a profile. Very abruptly, like I just was like sitting in my car and I didn't even go up to my apartment. I just sat there and for like an hour and a half I made a profile. And I chose a series of tasteful profile pictures, and also one from Halloween where I was pretending to be on a date with like a skeleton man to let everyone know I'm funny. And so, and I was off. And swiping on Tinder is incredibly stupid because you can't tell anything about people. I was basically like, I had some vague idea of who my type is, plus like no one that seems too scary or threatening, plus but like no one who seems too boring, so like basically no one falls into that. But I did match with some people, and I started messaging with them, and there was this one guy named Timothy, and I couldn't tell much about him, but in his profile he described himself as adorkable. And I couldn't really tell what he looked like because he was always like looking at one kitten or another in all of his pictures. So I'm like, hey, this is as good as anyone to start with. So I started talking. And within like 15 minutes, he was just like, hey, can I have your number? I'm just gonna call you. I was like, okay. And so then we're talking on the phone, and we're like telling each other about ourselves. And like very quickly, he just tells me that he used to do porn. And I had no idea what to do with this information, but I like acted like super chill about it. I was like, oh, it's fine. Because I felt like he was, I don't know, my friend thinks, she ended up going on this is a different story, but she went on a date with this guy too, but he was just like spreading a wide net. But she thinks that he did that to like try to like let people know he has a big dick. I didn't think that. I thought he was saying it to like weed people out. Like if I have a weird reaction to it, like, oh, end of conversation. So I was just like, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I used to work at Panera Bread, so we all have passed. And then the rest of the conversation was kind of not uneventful. But then we decided to meet up. This was very efficient. We like had a date a couple days later, and we met at the Bean and Leaf Cafe in Royal Oak. And as soon as I get there, I just get this sense of like it's just this is like a very serious thing. It's just like hi. And we sit down and we get drinks, and I remember this acquaintance of mine, like I don't know him very well, but his name's Dan, and he walked in with his girlfriend, and I was just like, I was like, I'm on a date, can you tell I'm on a date? Can you tell? And like he could not tell, nor did he care, and I was like, it's fine. And I like turned back to Timothy. And so at some point I told him that I was new to Tinder, and he starts giving me like advice. He's like, oh, well, set up a date really quickly, like, have like a set time the date's gonna go. And he's like, yeah, just get right down to getting to know the person. Like you, for instance, like you're clearly a sub. And I was like, I am? And he's like, well, yeah, like, you like have a lot of like leadership positions in your life, but like really you just want a man to take over. And I like didn't get up because I'm an idiot. I kind of like mentally checked out. I think I like asked him like, so why do you call yourself adorkable? Because that's not the word I would use to describe you right now. And he like described anime plots to me for 30 minutes, and that was it. And that was it. And then, I went on a series of many other equally unfun beginnings that had no middles or ends. There was, I ended up getting to a second date with this Filipino guy, and I only mentioned that he's Filipino because we were like one margarita deep, and he was suddenly wasted. And I was like, oh, that's right, like Asian people are missing that one enzyme that helps you break down alcohol. And that's not racist, that's like a real thing you can Google right now. It's that. But he did not like me bringing that up. And it probably didn't help that like I thought I was being cute, so I had like already taken his drink and was finishing it. So like that one was on me. But after a while I started to get really discouraged because most of the time on Tinder, like a date's not gonna happen. People just stop talking to you like very abruptly without like saying bye or anything. And so I was just like, what? Like I never went on more than one date a month because I just got so bummed when they went so terribly. And so then I like kind of start like I would just half-ass talk to people. Like this one guy messaged me and he was like introducing himself, and I was like, yeah, I know who you are. But I did, but I just wanted to like, I don't know, I wanted to like weird him out. But I did know who he was, because he is a stand-up comedian, and I'm an improviser, so we had like a ton of mutual friends. And so after I explained that, he stopped being weirded out. But I like avoided going on a date with him for months, because like, what the hell was the point? So I was just like very half-heartedly talking to him until one night, I went to an open improv jam, which is like an improv open mic, and I was just like up here like happiness and adrenaline, because that's what improv does to me, and I didn't want to go home because I was like so awake, and then he was texting me right then that he had just got out of a terrible open mic, and I was like, let's go get a drink, and he ended up, we went to a bar, and then at the end of it, he kissed me, and we've been dating for over a year now. Yeah. He is not here right now because he's on stage, like literally right now, which is kind of cute. So I said all that to say I don't regret all those terrible beginnings that I had to go through because it ended with ours. So that is my story. So getting to our other storytellers, our first one up is a social worker, and she is a GoU Academy graduate. Please welcome Jean Perry. Beginnings. So, my husband and I got married in 2008, and I was 30 and he was 28. And we had a wonderful time being married, and we still are, 10 years later. But we, about a year and a half after we were married, we had the discussion about, are we gonna have children? And neither of us had really thought about it before, because we were still really immature and ridiculous for a long time, but we decided that if we're gonna do it, we need to get on it, because I was gonna be 32, and I didn't want to be an old mom, and he didn't want to be an old dad. So we finished the conversation by deciding that we didn't commit to like, yeah, we're gonna go do this, but we decided that we would stop trying to prevent it. It's a real like non-committal situation, but we were like, okay, we're gonna not try to prevent it anymore. So as you know, I stopped preventing it. I stopped taking the pill, and I this was like early 2010. So fast forward to middle of June, the same year. I work in schools, and so the end of the school year always is the pack up, right? If you know anybody in school, you work in school, you probably help them move boxes of stuff that they didn't use all year and now they have to take back to their house. So I spent a day packing things up and locking it in cabinets, and I was talking to my girlfriend. I said, God, all day I've been super dizzy and dropping things, and just I don't feel right. And as we're talking, and she started, oh, like, what's going on with you? And I realized that I was late. And I was like, oh, I gotta go home. So my day ended, and I went home, and on the way, I went and picked up a supply of pregnancy tests. Because you could buy one, but nobody ever does. Like, there's also 3-packs and, like, utility packs and whatever. So I bought several, and I go home, and as I pull in the driveway, I get out of the car, and my husband had, knowing it was my last day of work, set up a dinner for 2 in the backyard. And he puts a table out, and there was flowers he picked from the yard, there's a bottle of wine, and like our plates we got from our wedding, and he's cooking steak and asparagus and potatoes, and it was delicious. And as soon as I saw, though, that he had set this up, I started crying. And I was not a crier at this point in my life, so I was like, oh, shit. Like, this is happening. So I didn't tell him this, though. I was like, let's have dinner, but like I had to keep avoiding drinking the wine because like in my mind I'm pregnant and I don't know because I know there's rules. And so I eat dinner, and when dinner ends, I like collect the plates and I take them in to start doing dishes because he was so kind to create the meal for me. So as I'm like clearing off the table, he gets a phone call from a friend of ours that had just moved from New York, and he wanted to talk to him, and he goes out to start a bonfire in the backyard. So I'm like, sweet, he's occupied. So I go in the house, put the dishes down, and I go into the bathroom, get my test, and I proceed to take, a very dignified medical home exam. And I'm sitting there, and in my life, I had taken many of these, right? And never once had I been like, anything but, oh, please, every deity that'll listen to me, please let this not be happening right now. So, but this time was different because I was 31, I had graduated, I got married, I had a job with insurance, I had a home, my husband had a job, like all the boxes of the list of like when you want to be pregnant were checked. And so it was the first time ever that I was like, okay, this is okay. Like this is the time. So I finished my medical exam and I put the little cap on it and I put it on the windowsill because I'm alone and he's outside and whatever. So I go and I set the microwave alarm for 3 minutes because that's the magic number. And I proceed to do the dishes in the most frantic way I've ever done dishes in my life. Timer goes off, I go in the bathroom, I look at it, and sure as shit, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, immediately my heart is like pounding straight out of my chest. And I go into the kitchen, and I pride myself on my composure, right? So I open the window, my back window of my kitchen leads out straight to the backyard where my husband is sitting, burning things and talking on the phone. And I'm like, honey, can you come in and help me with
bit, like, just talking to Zach. Okay. Shut the window. I'm like, he's not going to be in a bit, because he's talking to his friends. He's burning things. Like, that's never a bit. So I proceed to immediately grab my phone, go to my couch, and call my best friend. And she answers the phone, she's like, hello, and I'm like, I'm pregnant. And she has 3, so I'm like, what do I do? What's happening? And we talked for a few minutes, and it was my trial run of telling him that we're pregnant. So I talk to her and I get it out, and a few minutes later I'm like, okay, fuck this. You need to get off the phone. So I walk outside and I'm like, he's sitting, having a good time, burning stuff, talking to his friend, drinking, and I'm just like, get off the phone. I'm like, I need to talk to you right now, get off the phone, tell Zach to call later. He looks at me like I'm crazy, because at this point I was, and he hangs up the phone and I was like, I'm pregnant. Now, there's a lot of things that your husband can say to you when you tell him that you're pregnant. He didn't say any of the ones that I maybe expected. He looked dead at me and said, prove it! Well, as a matter of fact, I can. So I took him by the hand and I led him into our Ferndale bungalow, into the ugliest bathroom in the history of bathrooms, by the way. And we stood there and had this moment, right, where I handed him a stick that I had peed on earlier. And I'm like, here, look, and it says pregnant. And then we both, like, freaked out. And it wasn't a bad freak out. It was the best possible terrified, excited freak out you could have, right? And we hugged each other and we talked about it, all the while standing in the bathroom, like next to the sink. Like, we never even left the room. And then it was out, of course it was a Friday, so we're like, okay, we'll have to wait till Monday to call the doctor, and all those things that now as parents, we were gonna have to do. And then I took another test just to make sure, because I had bought many. And then, so it was interesting. So we had a few minutes, we probably spent 15 minutes talking about it, and we're like, we don't know what the hell we're doing, so like, and there's nothing we can do at this point. So he proceeded to go back outside and burn every piece of wood in the vicinity and drink himself stupid and call his friend Zach. And I went to bed because making people is exhausting. And so that is the moment in which I began to be a mom.
Thank you, Jean. Our next storyteller, he co-wrote the puppet show, Guess Who's Coming to Puppet Street, which was a hit here last year. Please welcome Jeff Mansk.
January 2nd, 1994, I was 23, and I was tired of feeling like I didn't belong anywhere, like I didn't fit in, and the solution to that in my head was to come out. So I opened up a magazine, looked in the back, and picked a bar at random in downtown Chicago. I lived in the suburbs at the time, and I thought, that is the first bar I'm going to go to, and I will have come out of the closet at that point. So, drove downtown, parked. The building was single-story, no windows, painted black, no sign, just the address, really small on the door. So, parked, walked up to the door, walked by the door, walked around the block, got to the door again, walked a little bit more, sat, I thought, I tried to summon up the courage, and then about a half hour later I saw somebody else walk in, and I was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. So I, like I said, summoned up all my courage, opened up the door to nothing, because the bar was empty, as it was 7:30 in Chicago, and nobody shows up to a gay bar for a few hours after that. So I was like, oh, okay, Another thing I also learned later that evening was that I had walked into one of the dingier leather bars in the Chicago, wearing like a sweater. So I sat down, ordered my 7-Up, and was thinking, is this it? Is this it? Am I getting out? Because I didn't open the door to 100 smiling, welcoming faces, all going, dude! I was just like, it's empty. So I walked to the back of the bar, down some stairs, and to the basement, which was about as big as the pool table that was there, with a bar on one side and 2 doors on the other wall. So I walked through one of those doors to, I'd say, about a 10 by 15 room, painted black, cinder block, lit only by one red light bulb hanging from the ceiling. This was a room where bad things happened. Things that shouldn't go on in the rest of this leather bar. So I deduced this must be the kissing room. I thought, when these leather guys in assless chaps and harnesses are somewhere else in the bar and they want to kiss, one of them can say, slow down! Let's go to that dimly lit dungeon in the basement so we can make out in secret. So, satisfied with my conclusion, I walked upstairs and I spent, a couple uneventful hours there. And around 10:30, people just started funneling in, and soon the bar was packed. So I thought, I'm gonna go check out that kissing room again. So I walked downstairs into the kissing room, and there was one guy standing against a wall. And I'm thinking, that's what you do. You just stand against a wall and wait to kiss. So I went to another wall and I stood there, sipping my 7-Up. Looking at the other guy, thinking, okay, is he gonna come over here and kiss me? Am I gonna go over there and kiss him? Somebody else gonna come in and kiss one of us. And before I knew it, somebody else walked in and walked up to that guy, and they made eye contact. And that new guy dropped to his knees, unzipped, and they skipped right past kissing. And I was standing there watching this, and I distinctly remember my first thought was, that can't be legal. And I was thinking, do the bartenders know what's going on in the kissing room? Like, should I tell the bartenders I don't want to tattle on them? Should I walk up to these guys and tap on them and be like, hey, I don't know if you're going to get caught doing that. Like, don't. And other people started entering the room, and none of them were kissing together. And before I knew it, the room was packed with people not kissing. And I was up against a wall, in a sweater, sipping my 7-Up, and it was horrible. Not because of what was going on, that was kind of intriguing. It was horrible because I couldn't breathe, and the temperature was rising, and there was no ventilation, and this was years before I knew anything about anxiety attacks or my disdain for crowded spaces. All I knew was I needed to get out of there. And I looked at the door, and I was like, I gotta make it through all these people and get to that door as soon as I can. And I just started squeezing through this sweaty amalgamation of everything. And, like, there were faces popping in front of me, like, yeah. I was being groped and pressed against, and I kept shouting over the club music, screaming, no thank you! And I was trying, and finally I got out of the room, and I took a deep breath, and I walked upstairs, where I spent the rest of the night. And at no point that night, or over the next year during the whole process of coming out, did I ever think I belong here, or I fit in. And putting together these memories just for this evening, I realized, my God, I was 23 before I gave myself permission to even fathom belonging anywhere. Because I was waiting for some idealized, invented moment to present that comfort to me. When in reality, I was just putting off inevitable growing pains and replacing them with the pain of stagnation and fear. The difference obviously being a growing pain can get you to something else that could be better. That night, however, definitely was the beginning of a whole new world of questionable regrettable decisions. Or, in retrospect, learning experiences.
Keep it going, good job, everyone. That was awesome. Our next storyteller, she is a photographer. You can find her work at Shelby Live Designs on Facebook. She's also a fresh new face on the Go Comedy staff. Please welcome Shelby Drake.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm overcoming anxiety. How many people here have anxiety, or they I haven't been on stage in about, I was 7th grade, so I'm 23 now. It's been at least 10 years since I've been on stage. I started in things like dance. I did music school where I played music and I sang, and I was like always up front, center of attention, always proud. And high school came around and I was really anxious. Really anxious to a point where like I retreated. My new stage was art, painting. It was more of a personal stage, this is my little stage here, not out in the open to other people. I didn't want anyone to see me, and I realized now I'm not alone. So a few weeks ago, I was actually arguing or bickering with my boyfriend. We both worked at a really super stressful customer service job. And as much as the customer is always right, that is so not fucking true. The customer is not always right. I got sick of it, and at only 23 was like, I can't work with customers on a daily basis. I can't, I'm anxious all the time. I'm not being myself. When's the last time I did something for myself? When's the last time you guys did something for yourselves? We don't always make time for that. So a few weeks ago, I started exploring, reading books. There's a book called Something About Being a Badass. And I was like, I want to be a badass. That's what I want to be. I want to be funny, I want to be a badass, and I want to be myself, whatever that means. When's the last time I did something? So I started doing things like putting myself out there in my photography. I got a studio at I got a job at this beautiful place. Started working there, started doing things for myself, and really sat down and said, my anxiety is not me. My anxiety is not, I'm not gonna let it define me. I used to be up on stage. I used to have an art show. I put myself out there. I've done it before, so why can't I do that again? And I started reading this book. And I said, okay, I'm going to read a little bit at a time, a couple pages, a couple chapters, and just follow through with it. And if it says, okay, reflect on the things, write out your whole week. What don't you like to do? And I realized I don't fucking like anything I do during the week. I might have a drink or two, that I like. I like letting my dog out in the morning sometimes, but other than that, I was like, I don't like my fucking job. I don't like that I can't be myself sometimes. And it felt really suffocating. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start journaling. I'm going to do this. I'm going to branch myself out there, and I'm just going to do something different. So I get out there and I start doing things. I booked myself a flight within 20 minutes to Florida. It was kind of crazy. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going. I'm going to leave town. I need to change of pace. I'm going. But it was something stepping outside of my comfort zone and doing something different than what I was used to. I wasn't letting that anxiety of, don't travel by yourself. Don't pursue your dreams. Don't be yourself. I was letting all those things keep me inside my little box. We felt in this box of comfort, and we need to break out of that. So I said to myself, I promised myself from this moment, I'm going to do things that make me uncomfortable. I'm going to do things that I haven't done in years. Things that they would say, Shelby Drake just did that, are you kidding me? That's her. So Amy actually approached me last week and was like, hey, would you be interested in doing something like Let's Just Say? And I was like, okay, let me think about that. box office. Not even 20 minutes later, I said to myself, fuck it, Shelby, you gotta do it. If you don't fucking do this, you're not gonna, like, you need to start somewhere. So I said, okay, you've danced, you've sung in music festivals, you've been in plays, you were in a musical, you did art, you put your work out there. You've done this before. This can be comfortable for you. This doesn't have to be something that's scary or unfamiliar. So I texted Amy and was like, yep, count me in. And then I went, shit, what did I just do? Oh my God, I'm so nervous. I was like, I had 2 glasses of wine before I came here, so I was like, I was pep talking myself, you've got to do this. You've got to just start, like I said, start somewhere. So I get here today, and I feel really good, guys. Let's just say that this is my beginning. This is where I leave my anxiety behind the stage. I don't let it take control of me, and I do what I was born to do. And if that means get up on stage or make art or just work with people, whatever that may be, I'm going to do that on a daily basis. And I hope that you guys all do that too. So this is my beginning.
Hell yeah, keep it going for Shelby. It is true. I brought it up to her and I'm like, just think about it, just mull it over. And 20 minutes later, she's like, I'll do it. Thank you. Our next storyteller is improviser and a dog enthusiast. Please welcome Kyle Butella.
It's true, I love dogs. Feel free to show me pictures of the dogs afterwards. So, my beginning, I'm going to have to, unfortunately, drag you guys through quite a bit of a bummer to get to the beginning. So I'm sorry for that, but I sprinkled some jokes in, so feel free to laugh, even though it's going to kind of get shitty. Because I believe tragedy plus time does equal comedy, and it's great to come to laugh at things, especially when they make you stronger. So let's start this. My dad's an alcoholic, and I'm just going to side note this here before it takes the left turn into oh shitville. He wasn't an abusive alcoholic. It's only ever gotten to shoving matches with my mom or stopped her from leaving the house before, but it was still a very, very horrible place. And when growing up, that's all you know because it was from birth. My dad started drinking at 16 and didn't stop for a long time. And so growing up like that, you just assume this is what happens, and you just assume this is what it is. And so growing up, the Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, birthday, Monday screaming match between my parents was never looked forward to, but it was expected. And it came on time every single time. And so growing up, I just had this fear, and it was always there, that you were just one step away from it going down that oh shit hill. Because that's what it was, and it was never any sign. It was always just something that would snap. You did something wrong, and then it snapped. You didn't do something wrong, and it snapped. You did something right, and it snapped, and it went to that whole point. And it was a point of, you fucked up, you didn't do something good enough, this is all your fault, kind of thing. And so when someone's like that in your life, they become a monster naturally to you. Like, you missed 3 blades of grass cutting it, Dad will come out in his custom jean shorts for some reason that's up to here, and these things are one like wash cycle away from being Daisy Dukes, and he starts screaming at your face at 5 o'clock in the summer in an open backyard in a neighborhood. And the only thing I can think is, oh wow, why are you wearing that? Why do you think that's good? And I don't know if it's a drunk dad attire or lower middle class white dad attire, but for some reason they love making their custom jean shorts. But it's not what I said. What I did was cry. And I shoved it down because that's what you are raised in when you live in that kind of household. You are told to shove it down and you put on a happy face because you're told you can't let it show. It's a secret no one can know. But in your head you're screaming, hey, all the signs are here. You know, it took us a month and a half to put up our above ground pool. There was a different car in the backyard every month that my dad was fixing. Every photo he was either passed out in the back or he doesn't remember it. And that was most of my photos. And I remember I was scared of men. I still kind of have this weird fear of men. It's terrifying because the second a voice goes above a certain octave, in which my dad described as talking loud, which someone should just tell him what talking loud actually means, it becomes uh-oh, I messed up again, I gotta do something. And it goes into every part of your life. The first time I had a male teacher in 3rd grade, we were, of course, being 3rd grade little shits, and so he kind of had to wrangle us in. And the second his voice got loud, I was like, I know what's about to happen. I got up and I got out of that classroom because I knew my mom was working down the hall that day, and I went to her because I thought, oh, here we go again. Even all facets of life it starts to get into. Blanket forts. Do you imagine that? The coolest thing as a kid, and that gets ruined by that kind of stuff. Because you make the coolest blanket fort, and I'm sorry, none of you have made a cooler one. You had to crawl through a little lunch table to get inside the whole room because we had a bunk bed. And we're gonna, me and my brother were gonna sleep in this room, sleep in this blanket fort because it was so cool. There was a light bright that we put up that illuminated the whole thing. It was awesome. And then 9 o'clock rolls around, and here comes your dad in his tidy whities, sobbing, crawling into the blanket fort, apologizing to you. And you're 8, and you're wondering, this isn't normal. But you shove it down, because that's what you get good at. And that's what this person became. I didn't have a father, I had a monster. And at 8 years old, I had very fond memories of laying in bed, whispering to myself, I hope you die, every night, to the sound of my mom and dad fighting. And so as time goes by, eventually senior year of high school, my parents are still together for some reason, bringing us, me and my brother, into the kitchen, and it's the whole, your father and I are getting a divorce. Makes sense. That was a bit, that took too long, in my opinion, because our mom was this guardian angel kind of figure. She would always protect us. She would let us have fun. She would let us stay home from school sometimes. She would let us do all these great things that we would get yelled at otherwise. And fortunately, as time went by, my dad eventually did go into AA, but a lot of people don't realize it takes a few years after you stop drinking to start changing. And so he still was just this kind of raging asshole, and he was so cemented into my mind at that point as this monster. I didn't love him. Whenever he said he loved me, I would just say the you too, so I didn't have to say love. And so time goes by, my mom finally leaves, my brother moves out, and I get away. And every now and again, my dad would try to reach out to me, and sometimes it would kind of snap and go back to what it was, but it was still, how are you doing? And I don't want to talk to you because you're this monster. And then a lot of deep thinking goes by, and I eventually realized, I think I have problems from this. As you would when you get good at shoving stuff down, because it comes back up. And to this day, it's still well. And so time goes by, my dad would still reach out to me. I start seeing a social worker. I cry a lot in front of this woman, and I start doing a lot of serious thinking about myself. And I have to have that realization, I think, that all of us have that difficult one at some point, that these people in our lives, parents, anyone above you that's a good influence or bad influence, these people that have power over you are just that, people, and they're flawed. And my dad wasn't a monster, he was a man that was sick. And he's now 15 years sober. Yes, woo. And so, my beginning starts at about 2 years ago, on a November night, in this kitchen where I watched my family tear itself apart, after years of my father being there as the first person I go to, in an event that I thought was going to be something big, some big, like, grand gesture, like, this is it, this is happening, as you see in the movies, you're both sobbing and hugging it out. But no, just a quiet night, and I tell my dad, I forgive you for your drinking. And it wasn't some big moment, he didn't break down, but I could tell it really got to him. And you always hear weightlifting from your shoulders, and that was the first time I actually felt that, so that's the beginning for me there, and that's the sweet part of a bittersweet ending. Because another part in this beginning where I finally have grown up, and finally realized some things, my mother's an alcoholic, and she always was. And it was never seen because my father overshadowed everything. And where he is this raging alcoholic, she is a manipulative alcoholic. And over the past few years, things kind of deteriorated. She would ask for money, we'd give her money to help out with things, we were helping her. she would have all these problems. We would help her, send her money, do these things for her, and it turns out we were just feeding an alcohol budget for her. And it got to a tipping point where my Mother's Day last year was at a phone call at 10 a.m. I was hungover, it was awesome, to my mom's boyfriend saying, hey, you need to call your mom because she kicked me out and she's drunk. And so the phone call for 1 hour is just with my drunk mom at 10 a.m. on Mother's Day, telling me, giving me all these really vague things you hear before people kill themselves, and it's terrifying. But this isn't the first time. And she did 2 times in rehab, and she just won't accept that she needs help. So I unfortunately traded one person to the other, and then I had to learn something else that was beginning for me, and that was how you sometimes need to shut people out of your life. Because all they will do is just eat away at you, no matter how much you help them. And you have to give your all, and they want your all, and you can't give that to people if they're not going to try it themselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. If you're sitting out there and thinking, I want to do this, you can. This is a monthly show. Our next show is May 16th. Is Patty out here? No? Okay, well, your bartender tonight will be the host next time, Patty. And if you're interested, talk to me or Patty after the show. We also have a Let's Just Say Facebook page. Any of those ways, you can email us at letsjustsay@gocomedy.net. I don't believe we have a theme yet, but that will be coming up quickly. But let's get back to the storytellers. Our next one is a copywriter. She's a member of Dragon Army, which is Go Comedy's resident company understudies. And she is the star of a book review YouTube channel called Super Pow. Please welcome Paulina Barker.
At the highest and lowest and weirdest parts of my life, I often stop and ask myself, out loud because I'm neurotic, how did I get here? What decisions did I make and actions did I take to get me to this spot right here? We make so many decisions every single day that it's hard to discern the innocuous ones from the ones that can change your life forever. If you had ordered coffee instead of tea that day, would you be sitting next to the person you are right now? Who can say? But sometimes you can look back and pinpoint the exact decision that started the rest of your life. So over a decade ago, I was a wee lass in high school. I'm still kind of wee, but there you go. And I had somehow talked my way out of taking a math class my senior year. And I had lots of room in my schedule for more humanities. So I decided to take a creative writing elective. Now, I've always loved reading and writing, but this was the first time that I took a class surrounding the subject of writing. And I loved it so much. Now, the teacher in this class did something that in hindsight is kind of messed up, but at the time I was into it. He arranged the seating chart in such a way where he put the kids in the front seats who, quote, knew their stuff, and the kids behind them in descending order knew less stuff, with the idea that the kids in the back would look to the kids in the front for inspiration and guidance. Not so great for the esteem of the kids in the back, but I was seated in the front. So I felt pretty damn good about that. And like I said, I loved this class. It validated the fact that I could do this, that I could write. I loved the assignments, and my peers and my teacher gave me great feedback. They loved what I wrote. So this directly influenced what I chose for my college course of study. I went to Grand Valley State University, Lickers, and when we were touring the campus, we were encouraged to seek out advisors and professors and talk to them about our course of study. So I marched right up to the appropriate person and declared, I am going to major in creative writing. Well, she very quickly and logically talked me off of that ledge and saying that a degree in creative writing would not have much value on the job market once I graduated. So instead, she told me to major in English, language, and literature, which, as you know, has so much more value. that's what I did, and I am the proud owner of a Bachelor of Arts in English Language and Literature. So what do you do with that degree once you graduate and are ejected out into the world? Well, first, you run away to Alaska to fish salmon for a summer, but that's a different story. Once you come back home from Alaska with fish scales still in your hair and an English degree, what do? You go into advertising. I got an internship at an ad firm in Southfield, and eventually I was hired on to be a junior copywriter. Peggy Olson is my patron saint. and I worked there for a little while until that company imploded. The CEO, as it turns out, was embezzling funds and not paying our vendors, which, by the way, is not a good business practice, just so you know. And I was laid off from my job 5 days before closing on my first house. So, I was unemployed with an English degree and a shiny new mortgage. But luckily, I had some really good people in my corner helping me make connections and referring me to other jobs. So my former creative director, great guy, that's not sarcastic. It came out that way, but it's not, he's a great guy. He referred me to this company in Ann Arbor who was looking for a copywriter. And I was interviewing at some other places too, but I went to this interview in Ann Arbor, and part of the interview team who was interviewing me was a woman who first asked me if I was old enough to drink, and then she asked me what I liked on my burger in the formal interview. So here I came to a crossroads, because I was offered 2 jobs at the same time, very similar positions. But I thought back to that interview in Ann Arbor, and I thought, these people seem like more fun. So little did I know at the time, because I took the Ann Arbor job, little did I know at the time that the woman who asked me about alcohol and burgers would become one of the best friends I've ever had in my entire life. So we worked together at that job. She was the art director to my copywriter, a match made in heaven, until we realized that the best thing about working at that job was being able to see each other all the time. And it was time for us to move on to other jobs. Now my friend and I live quite far apart from one another, and she was worried that our friendship would start to drift. So she came up with a proposal. Let's take improv classes together. Now I was a little bit hesitant, not because I didn't want to do improv, that sounded like a lot of fun, but because I was saving up money for my honeymoon, and I didn't know if I could spare the change, because we were going to Paris, and I wanted to eat bonbons. But my friend can get me to do pretty much anything by looking me dead in the eye and saying, "You in? We doing this?" So I did, and I still went to Paris and ate bonbons, and it was a great time. So we started taking improv classes at a little place you may have heard of called Go Comedy. And yeah, go give it up. We're in it. And I loved it. I loved performing. It was just a great-ass time. And since then, I made 100 little decisions to keep performing, to keep taking classes, and to audition for stuff, until somehow I got accepted into this wonderful community of performers, until I met someone in this community named Amy, who asked me to make a decision about telling a story on a Thursday night about beginnings. So I had no idea that taking this creative writing class in college would lead me to this, in high school, creative writing class in high school would lead me to this blue stage one day. And I don't know what decisions you all made to get you here tonight, but I'm so glad that you made them. So thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. Our next storyteller is a journalist and filmmaker behind Alive in Detroit, a documentary film and health justice social impact project. Please welcome Shiraz Ahmed.
Hi everybody, my name is Shiraz, and 5 years ago, I was in Toronto with my mom and my sister. We were at a wedding, as it were. We were at one of those strip mall noodle joints that are amazing, but you should avoid at all costs. We were headed out, we just finished lunch, we were coming back to Detroit, when my mom tripped over and collapsed. I thought everything was okay, and I went up to her and realized she wasn't responsive. And she snapped out at me. She came over and she said, of course, it was the noodles. I was like, come on, we all ate the same lunch. We all had the same noodles. But she'd been feeling faint all week, and so we thought we wouldn't take any chances. And so instead of coming back to Detroit, we went straight to the emergency room, where they told us that my mom had 3 blocked arteries. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I have no idea what the hell heart disease looks like. You know what I mean? Like, I know what a car accident looks like. Every high schooler knows what lung disease looks like. But when it comes to heart disease, I found myself Googling, like, what is happening to my mother? What is going on? And it turns out, it looks like corn. Like, for real. It's like small, like, it's microscopic kernels of corn filling up your veins and your arteries and slowing down the flow of blood and oxygen to your brain. Imagine the fuel that keeps you going every day, slowing to a trickle. That's what was happening to my mom. She ended up getting a triple bypass surgery. She's okay now, thanks for asking. But I was forever changed that day. I was 23, and I was like, damn, what's gonna happen to me? I started asking around, I talked to my mom. She was like, well, you know, my dad, your grandfather, he died of a heart attack. And you know, his brother, he died of a heart attack. I was like, wow, this is sounding like an unfortunate coincidence for all of these siblings to die of similar conditions. I talked to my cousin, he was like, you know what, I worry about my health too. Because your grandfather was a smoker. And apparently all of the kids would come around and hang out at his house because he was so cool at smoking, he would just hand out packs of cigarettes. We do not have a family history of smart and intelligent choices. And then I talked to my doctor. And first of all, what I learned from my doctor is 6 drinks a week is too many drinks of alcohol. Second of all, she told me that if I didn't change my habits, I'd have to start taking blood pressure medication before the age of 30, which most people here look pretty young, but that is not good, apparently. Now, I'll give you some backstory. I was into kickball when I was in elementary because of all the standing it took. I liked playing video games and playing Magic the Gathering before school in the morning. I was not an active kid. I did not pay attention to what I ate because I just hoped my metabolism would last me out. And then I found myself facing some tough choices. I started eating healthier and I started exercising. And I just got more and more confused. Is lobster fat good for you and crab meat is bad for you? Vegetable oil is bad for you and coconut oil is apparently very bad for you? I had no idea what I was doing with myself, and I decided I need to make a drastic change just to feel normal again. And so I decided to become a vegan for 3 weeks. Me and a friend were starting a podcast. We decided to make a challenge out of it. We pulled in like 10 of our friends to do this vegan challenge. Week 1, all vegan breakfast. Not so difficult, right? Week 2, all vegan breakfast and lunch. Not bad, you can do with a salad a day, some bread in the morning. Week 3, all vegan everything. This is when things began to break down. I will say, and I think most of my friends, we have like a set. So this podcast never got released, by the way. You will find it. This is the exclusive use of this whole experiment. But we had a whole dinner, and I think everybody would say after that first week they felt energized. Regardless of what effect the diet was having on them, they felt like they were doing the right thing. By week 2, people were like, okay, I'll do it for the pot. I'll do it for the pot. By week 3, people were waking up in the middle of their night, their stomachs rumbling, and going out and having second and third dinners, caving in and having chicken. I will say, I am not the only one that did not make it to the end of the challenge. So this beginning doesn't really have a positive ending. But what I can say is I became more conscious of the things that I put in my body, and I became closer to my mother and my cousin and the rest of my family that shares this deeply personal condition. Thank you, everybody.
Give yourself are unfortunately at our last storyteller for the night, but don't forget our next show it's always the third Thursday. Next month it's May 16th. But our final storyteller for the night, he is a sales engineer. He is originally from Tennessee. He moved to Detroit in late 2017. He's also a student here at Go Comedy who has a show coming up on May 7th. Come see it. Please welcome Alexander Ketchum.
How y'all doing? Good. Well, believe it or not, in 2007, I found myself on a plane with 2 suitcases with everything that I was allowed to take. And I was going to move to Matsuyama, Japan. If you're wondering where the hell Matsuyama is, I did too when I first heard the name. Japan was a country where I did not speak the language, and I was moving there to teach English, which, quote unquote, from one of my very close friends, was a language I did not have a great grasp upon. So it was, I was nervous, to say the least, you know what I mean? But I arrived, and the reason I would make these choices was because I felt that I had, done the high school thing, done the college thing, majored in business, and done all these things that I was supposed to be doing. Was doing all those job interviews, gonna get that job, start that career right now. And I took a minute to think about it, and I realized that I didn't feel in control of my own life at all. And I felt like I had forgotten me, I guess, who I was. And I wanted to take a step back and do something that I just wanted to do. And that was something completely different than live in Tennessee. And Japan is completely different than Tennessee. In every way you can possibly imagine. From toilets to language. When I stepped off the plane, I knew 4 words. Hello, sorry, waiter, toilet. Word toilet was quite handy in the first few weeks. So I arrived in Matsuyama, and fast forward a couple of weeks. A few funny stories. I bought a carton of milk with a cow on the front, took a big swig, it was yogurt. A little boy saw me, realized I was not from there, and started running circles around me saying, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And I high-fived him because I was like, "That's good English, man." Nothing bad happened. The hospitality was humbling, and I was learning to teach English poorly. For the most part of it. In general, my career was a poor English teacher. Not in the money, but in the quality of my education that I gave. It was poor. Or at least Southern. So it was actually my second weekend. So after 2 full weeks in Matsuyama, I'm still extremely nervous, but I've got this mantra: you've got a contract for a year. You've got to do this shit for a year. Because if you don't, you go back home and you got nothing. You're about a year and a half out of college, and you ain't got 0 education. I mean, no experience, nothing, no recommendations. You're worthless. Unless you want to get a master's or something. And pay every bit of it. But this opportunity arose, and it was the first festival in the city that I was living in was going to occur the next day. And leading up to going to Japan, I wasn't going there blind. I studied the culture, I read everything I could, I talked to a friend who lived there, and he had these amazing stories of all these crazy things that he did, and I was like, yeah, it's going to be awesome. None of that shit really happened to me yet. It's going to be good. And all these festivals that he just walked up to and then became a part of, and all right, festivals, that's what it's going to be. This thing starts at 5 a.m. the next day. I get off work at 9 p.m. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it, I ain't going to bed. Because the bars don't close, and I just figured I'll just go to the bar and just stay there until I find somebody who knows where this festival's going down. My plan worked, insofar as I did find somebody to go there with me. He knew nothing about it. There was a bartender there, who, when I tried to order a vodka tonic in my broken Japanese, he said, "God damn it, man, just speak English." But it was perfectly British English. Oh, damn it, man. You know, I can't do it, but he did. So I was like, hey, there's this festival I want to go to, and he's like, oh yeah, I'll go with you. And it's about 4:30 or so. He just walks right from behind the bar and just leaves with me. And I was like, don't you need to talk to someone? Nah, fuck it. All right, he got fired that night, by the way. We got in a cab and went to the Dogo area, and if anybody's an anime fan here, coincidentally, if you've seen Spirited Away, the big onsen they use in that movie is based off that Dogo onsen in Matsuyama. Anywho, the festival was about these fighting mikoshi. It was like a little portable shrine. The fighting part, however, is quite interesting. These portable shrines weigh about as much as a car and are quite large, and these two groups of men rammed them together as fast as they possibly can in a reverse tug of war of pushing, and whoever gets pushed to the ground and, you know, hopefully nobody dies, sometimes they do, but if your shrine pushes the other guys down, you get a better harvest that year for your neighborhood. You know, it's a serious battle, you know, you gotta get that rice. You gotta get that rice. It was when we got there, no one was there. But then within like 20 minutes, I shit you not, like just people came out of the woodwork, and it was just like Mardi Gras. It was like, lost my guide. It's 5 a.m. I'm shit-faced drunk. Just stumbling around my little wind-up camera, just trying to take pictures. Yeah, this is good. This time I'm having fun. Yeah. And it was terrible. But I got a few good pictures, you know, doing the room tourist thing, and then decided it was time to try to get home. 3 hours later, I found a location in the cab that I recognized, and I made him stop, and I just got it. Yeah, I'm trying to keep positive and all this. But I started walking home, and there was a convenience store that was the symbol of like the grace of God to me. It's a Circle K. To this day, I'm loyal to that franchise because whenever I was in that K, I knew I was close to home. And I'm walking up, you know, by this point I've already sobered up somewhat, quasi hungover, and passing, just walking, just tired, exhausted. And there's a huge mikoshi in this parking lot. I'm like, oh shit. Can I get a picture? Because I got like 2 left, right? Gotta do the whole thing so I can turn it in and get my 27 pictures from somewhere that develops film that doesn't exist anymore. And they're like, no, you get in here with us, you know, because they're all just drinking. They're getting their day started. And I'm in these pictures, and they're like, do this. You know, just bring it. And they start, you know, asking me questions in Japanese, which I don't understand. One guy speaks, you know, broken English, and he's like, you live. I'm like, all right, yeah. I was like, right there. I could see my apartment building, you know, Tachibana. Oh, I recognize that word. That's my neighborhood. That's my address because I've been lost enough to know by now. And I was like, yeah. He's like, Team Tachibana. I mean, he's serious as shit. I mean, this is a big dude. Like, it's not somebody, you know, your image of Japanese Simon. This is like a jacked up dude with a shaved head who was serious. And I'm just like, good. Smiley face. I hope you win. And he just shakes his head, no. Man, pick that shit up. So I get this team and I carry this mikoshi, and I'm like grinding my shoulder into this thing that weighs about as much as a small car. And it's so painful. And I'm just thinking, I gotta go home. And then someone hands me a beer. And the shampoo effect takes place. The shampoo effect is when, you know, you lather and you rinse and you repeat. It don't take near as much shampoo to get back to the same thing you had before. I'm back in the game, baby. But you know, about 40 minutes later, I'm just like, how do they fucking do this? And then I let go a little bit, and it's still up there. It didn't fall. You know, there's like 70. Oh shit! It's kind of like a team thing. All right. I just been like, what in my ass? And it was terrible. I got damn near threw my shoulder out. And then all of a sudden, this guy, who was the same guy who told me to pick it up, grabs me by the back of my shirt and like points up. And there was always two guys riding this Migoshi. They're the team leaders. And he's trying to tell me to get up there with him. So I get up and like I'm on top of this thing. And whenever somebody new gets up there, they pick it up like as far as they can. They all lift it. They start shaking it. And they scream, "Motekoi, motekoi," which means, in my Japanese translation, just bring it. Because I'm a pro wrestling fan, and The Rock said that. That's how The Rock did this, so that must mean just bring it. It's close enough, as far as an actual translation. But as I'm up there, and this thing is shaking, it's a sunny morning, I'm drunk as hell again. And these guys are hugging me and like high-fiving me, and it was at that moment, like one of the few times in my life where I've had a second to just stop, and everything kind of just comes into like slow motion, you know what I mean? And take it all into consideration, like why I came here and the work I put in to get here. And I was like, fuck the fear, like nothing bad's happened yet. And goddamn it, I'm gonna love this place. Because these people like drinking, they like partying, and that is the voodoo that I do. Oh, so at that moment, I had no more reservations, and I was like, this is going to be an adventure. And that was my beginning of a 5-year stint in which so many more things happened. We ain't got time to talk about that. Baby, there are some crazy things that happen in the day. Anyways, thank y'all. Thank Go Comedy.
Thank you, Alex. And a big thank you to all of our storytellers today. Give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful, attentive audience. Thank you to Patty at the bar. She's been feeding the drinks all night. Thank you to Pete, our stage manager. Yeah! There is actually another show after this. Stick around. It's a reality TV-based improv troupe. Very funny. If you're not staying, please drive safe and have a great night.